Welcome, everyone, to another episode of IT Visionaries. And today, we have one of our special roundtables. We have Eric Carrasquilla. He is the SVP and GM at CSG for Digital Engagement Solutions. And Tim Vanderham, he's the CTO at NCR Corporation. Eric, Tim, welcome back to the show.
Happy to be here, Albert.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Albert.
All right, Eric, we'll start with you. In case someone didn't hear about your last episode, and even if they did, you've now changed roles. You were at Conga, now you're at CSG. Give us a quick update on what you do at CSG, and also what is CSG in case someone out there doesn't know.
Yeah, so CSG is a company that provides software and services to help companies engage and connect with their customers and monetize those relationships. So under that umbrella, I'm responsible for the digital engagement part of that solution to help companies drive differentiated experiences with their customers. So think about in a company, folks that are worried about things like customer satisfaction, churn, net promoter score. So this is typically a chief marketing officer, an experience officer, and their teams. So they typically turn to us when they say, hey, I'm responsible for all these metrics, but I don't know quite how to move the needle on them, especially because this crosses so many boundaries. And all the stuff that I had to drive a great experience in a physical channel, it doesn't exist in a digital channel, or if it does, it doesn't exist well, and I can't do things at scale. And we've tried some stuff in this area before, but we really haven't gotten great results. So how we can go through and help them and think of something like a customer retention scenario. So by the time you get to a point where, Albert, you're cutting up a credit card, or you're cutting off your cable subscription, or you're just not using a product and service anymore, it's too late. You can't put the pin back in the churn grenade after it's already gone off. Yeah. However, you can use things like a customer data platform or journey mapping and analytics to see what were all the things that led up to that point, who's a retention risk and why. And then on top of that, you can use things like journey orchestration and real-time decisioning to go through and say, hey, for Albert, what's the best save treatment to apply at a particular point in time in context? So if you're calling up, something about your bill, that's probably not the best time to renew you. Let's get you sorted and happy, and then we'll look at doing something for you. And then the third piece of that is, how do you do these things digitally at scale in the channel of choice? Because for Albert, you just don't pick your phone up. You see a number on there.
Most people don't anymore.
It's like some warranty renewal or some other random thing. You're not going to pick that up, but you're going to respond to a text. So there's a virtual assistant on a website. So there's a number of applications that we provide in there. So that's basically what we do in my area of the business around the digital experience part of that equation.
Well, I can tell you that when I did leave my cable company, the cable company I had, it was at the time, I'll say it's fine, Time Warner Cable, which got acquired by Spectrum. I can tell you that they did not have your services because, sure enough, when you go to cancel, you go through the phone trees, and then there's always someone that wants to offer you a great rate. Great rate. All of a sudden, there's a great rate available. This wasn't available to me when I was a customer, but now I can have a great rate if I stay. But yeah, I agree with you completely wholeheartedly. I could see it. Like when my mind's already on cancel. You ain't gonna bring me back.
Yeah, and Albert, it's insulting at that point. See, that's what you're relating about the experience. Not just that you left, but you're a detractor at this point, because it's like, guys, read the room. Like the time to do this was a few months ago.
Amen to that story. I live it as well, Albert. So I agree with you on the cable side.
Yeah, once my mind's out, I'm out. Like you can't bring me back because, like you just said, Eric, if you're withholding a gift, well, now I know you weren't going to give it to me. Like you were basically hoping I was just going to pay for what I was paying until I needed it.
And
so
Albert,
I feel like you're deceiving me. Well, not
Albert,
you personally.
How much did they spend? How much did they spend to get you as a customer?
I have no idea.
An inordinate amount of money to get you.
I have no idea.
Well, trust me, having done a lot of business with cable companies, they spend inordinate amounts to get you in and get you locked in that contract. So the great news and the silver lining about this is it's a solvable problem. There's stuff out there today that can help solve that. So
yeah, well, as a consumer, I hope whatever you're offering, I hope it picks up because yeah, everyone can use a little bit more service. Tim, Give our audience a little picture in case they didn't hear your episode. What is NCR and what do you do there? I said before in our last episode, I think everyone in the world is probably using an NCR machine, whether you know it or not. I think you have like I said, 100% market penetration in the United States. I'll just speak for us, but go ahead and tell us what you got. What is NCR and what do you do there?
Yeah, I always love that quote from you, Albert. I use it often with 100% penetration for consumers across the U.S. So NCR, 137-year-old company. I'm the chief technology officer here. I'm responsible for all things software that interact, kind of the consumers interact with across 3 industries: banking, restaurants, and retailers. And so if you think about a digital banking app on your phone, if you start thinking about online grocery ordering, online food ordering at a restaurant, you think about going to an ATM, self-checkout at like a Whole Foods, that's all technology that NCR builds to really help our customers, banks, restaurants, and retailers better serve their consumers. So we like to think of ourselves as a software and services company that runs that software in the cloud or in the restaurant, in the store, in the bank branch to help our customers transact and really help us all as consumers across the globe, interact in a daily basis with some form of monetary value. And since our last talk, Albert, we actually bought a crypto company. So now we're cash to crypto and everything in between. So we've been doing some exciting things here at NCR around the future of commerce and the future of financial services as well.
Yeah, that we had right before, or excuse me, I think we had the interview and you said it was coming, but it actually hadn't come yet because you're like, by the time this is releases, it'll be here. It's like you had just announced a partnership, I believe, with Sheets to allow people to use cryptocurrency to purchase gasoline and as well as snacks and stuff at Sheets gas stations, which are, I believe they're primarily in the Northeast. They're primarily on the East. I don't see too many in the West, but for those of you guys that are listening.
Primarily Northeast, East Coast. And we've gone even further than that with actually buying a company called LibertyX. So we can actually allow people to have a digital wallet, transact, buying crypto, transferring crypto cross-border. There's some really cool stuff there. So, so NCR, 137-year-old company, reinventing ourselves every day.
Yeah, there you go. And Tim did not name these, but if you go to an ATM, it's probably an NCR machine. If you buy groceries and you're using that self-checkout scale, that's an NCR machine. So these guys are everywhere. And then Tim taught me in the last episode that when you purchase sometimes online, we might think of Stripe as the number 1 payments processor, but it could be an NCR on the back end too. So you guys are everywhere. Eric, awesome having you guys both on the show. Today's topic, we wanted to bring you guys together because you guys are building customer-centric applications, both of you, right? Customer-centric, thinking about customers, how they interact. But at the same time, you're building these things in an environment where we now have gone hybrid. I don't think there's any point in talking about like is remote or hybrid's here to stay, right? So we'll just say hybrid's here to stay, right? This is not going away. So, what we'd love to hear a little bit is like, what's been working for you? We want to talk about this conversation is what's been working for you and where do you see opportunities to help yourselves? Because one of the things that a lot of our guests lately have been on, and you've seen it on the news, is this idea of the great resignation, that there's more people than ever that are now changing jobs too. So it's like you guys are building great application services, but at the same time, you need better tools to support hybrid environments to keep people, good people, right? Because good people are now more options than ever. I'll start with Eric. Talk a little bit about what it means for the employee side. Like, what is it that you guys are doing that you think you're doing well? And what do you think is like opportunities for growth? Because this is where I think every tech leader is in right now. It's like, they know that they have to accommodate for this because if they can't, someone else will.
Yeah. So Albert, when we talked last, I was working, I won't name the cities for people don't kind of understand the geography of the Bay Area, but what they will understand is I was commuting 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
Hour and a half up, hour and a half back. So I was doing the math on this, 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 12 months a year, 576 hours. That's 24 days in my car. And so I look at what I could do with that 24 days. I can learn a language. I can, spend more time doing work, like have better work-life balance, not be burnout. So I think that first piece of employers looking at this as, hey, do we need to tether someone in a physical office? Forget about COVID, forget about whatever else. we'd like the employee to have that time, and that's a perk of coming and working for the company, being able to go through and do that remote. And CSG has a great policy around this. It's hybrid, and the employee can go through and choose. So this is one piece that I think is working great, that companies are now looking at it, and not even the most innovative ones, but everybody around, hey, you know what, there's probably a better way to do this. I think also a lot of the infrastructure and tools that may have been experimental for some innovative companies are now much more prevalent around, just what we're on with Zoom and Teams and virtual whiteboarding and a lot more of these digital tools to go through and interact. I think for companies, what they're still trying to get a better handle on is that physical interaction and that sense of camaraderie and the meeting in between the meeting. How do you go through and create those bonds? And doing that exclusively digitally, I'm not going to lie, is a bit tough. What I have found is that, I've been in my role at CSG for probably plus or minus 7 months at this point. And I have, gone through and traveled and been different places. What I have found is when people are face-to-face, those meetings are way more productive. I don't see people with laptops popped and going through and, do an email and the rest of it, because this is their thing where they get to meet through the rest of the team. So I think over time, you kind of get your system worked out for that, how you kind of bridge that digital piece. I think some of it is going more out of your way for those face-to-face interactions. And then also being able to go through and figure out what sort of mandatory breakpoints do you need to go through and do? Because I don't know about you guys, but like doing the dusk till dawn on Zoom, like that just fries my brain. So I think people will come up with those logical breakpoints better over time.
Eric, if I can just chime in, I think it's well stated as to what do we do for that meeting between meetings, right? The in-person stuff. So what we're doing at NCR, I'd be curious to hear what you're doing, is as people are flexible and have a hybrid work model, we're encouraging the teams that work together to try to kind of self-organize. So you don't have it. We got 30,000 employees. I don't want 30,000 different hybrid work schedules. Trying to put them in a team structure so that they get the value and the benefit of, if they're in the office, their teams with them as well. They get that in-person interaction. They get that management, mentorship, coaching, etc. And then they can use all the collaboration tools, some that you referenced. We use Slack quite heavily as well. They can use all those collaboration tools when they're in their hybrid, AKA at home or a coffee shop work model as well.
So I got a question about, the chat, because most people have adopted some sort of chat feature, Slack being the most prominent. Of course, there's HipChat, there's others. Teams has chat features. How do you guys go about signal to noise problems? Because you cannot have, all right. So like Mission, I'll give you a good, Mission is under 20 employees. I think our like jovial water cooler channel is kind of annoying. Like there's too many people talking, and then we have under 20 people. I can't imagine 30,000 people like posting GIFs and memes and like funny things that they saw on the internet that day. It would be a mind-boggling experience.
I don't think we have a corporate-wide public channel like that, and teams have to self-organize. So I've got my Slack actually up here in front of me right now as I'm recording this with you, Albert, and kind of can see things coming in. We're very channel specific. I run a software development organization, so we've got people that are supporting those real-time transaction systems like payments, like digital banking, et cetera. That's very real. That's very focused in, if you're in that channel, you're doing something, you've got to be, 100% on. Then you've got the social atmosphere, you got the direct chats, so on and so forth. I love it from a standpoint, though, that there's that search history, right? So, we really use it as a productivity tool. And then, you have a little bit of fun with it as well. But I think at least we found at NCR, there's an easy balance to find on where you go have the fun and the camaraderie, and then the channels where you have the real work that are going to actually live for today and tomorrow and in the future. And you just got to find that delicate balance. That's what we're doing. And it seems to be working pretty well, at least for my team.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and I'm not sure if you ran into this or not, Tim, but what I've found is, on the demographic spectrum, there's people that will gravitate more towards whether it's Slack or Teams or whatever else for that as a mechanism because they just can't stand email. And then there's other folks on that spectrum that's their that's their jam. If it's not an email, like it doesn't exist. So it's like trying to find out what's the right mechanism there. And you know, the overload is real. Like I have God knows how many channels, you know, on the left-hand side of the taskbar there. And there's some I heavily travel and my team heavily travels. And the rest of it, like you said, Albert, you know, whatever the official water cooler is on the thing, not so much for me. But again, I think over time, you know, a lot of this stuff will work itself out and gravitate towards ones that have a greater sense of not only effectiveness, but just kind of center of gravity around stuff. And it's kind of Darwinism at its finest.
Yeah, you're right. Go ahead, Albert. Sorry.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I think you're right, Eric, on the demographic side, and we see it as well. And so then I try to set some guidelines, or in my leadership team try to set some guidelines as to, hey, we're on the engineering side, right? We don't want to live in email. We're living in our source code repository. We're living in our site reliability engineering views. Like that's what we do. And so we kind of guide people towards using that in the collaboration tool and not email. Now, where we see the challenge at NCR is then the sales team or, you know, support organizations that use other sets of tools. How do you interlink those? So we've had to create those integrations to make sure that, you know, people aren't being lost in the fray of not being able to communicate because they use a different set of tools. But then how do we interact, make those tools interact automatically through bots, through integrations, through other means? And so that's been one of the things that we've had to invest in, so that we don't have that lost chasm between my team and other teams.
Yeah, that struggle is real. I mean, especially with you running the build side of the house and, like, you know, developers living in HipChat or Slack. And it's like on the sales side, they're using Chatter, and there's something else that corporate IT is trying to do. CSG's done a pretty good job of getting people on one platform and kind of tamping that down up front. The company I came from prior, it was like legit silos across the board and very difficult to get that adoption on a common platform.
Back when I was still selling software, I remember our CEO came down and had like a very strict rule, like, hey, you're not allowed to talk to developers, like, because one of the things that is a byproduct of, let's say, access. So here's an interesting factoid that we've learned from our different guests, and I'd love to see if this is a problem or how you guys handle it, or what your thoughts are on it. In a physical space, you have a sales team and you can have your engineering team. You can actually just physically separate them. So there was no way to interact, right? And if your tooling is siloed and you're physically siloed, now it's really hard, right? But we know that some of the sales guys would come over and be like, hey, where's this feature? Where's this? And you could say all you want to him. Hey, check the roadmap. He's not looking at the roadmap. He's not going to go check your Git repository and be like, where's my feature that my, you know, prime customer's asking? He's going right to he might be going to your desk, Tim. Like, yo, when's it checking in? Right? And you're laughing because you know this. Because some guy manages a monster account.
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Right? But like now these tools are really easy to like kind of tag people in, like pull people in where, you know, maybe it was a little bit harder before, like, you know, and like, so there's like, I don't know if it's the right way to call it, like monkey passing or passing responsibility, but like a lot of like responsibility of people over like pulling people in, like, hey, you're responsible to me for an answer because Eric, you have the answer. I don't want to set up a meeting. I'm just going to @Slack you and be like, yo, hey, answer this question so I can close my deal or whatever it is I got to do, right? I can speak well to the sales engineering side of things. How do you see that as a potential problem, or how do you guys manage and mitigate, like, who's responsible for what? Because accountability can be very quickly passed with open communication tools.
You know,
go
ahead, Eric. You go first. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things, and we definitely saw it at the prior company that I was at, one of the things we sold was around contract management software. And one of the huge problems that companies run into is less about the tool and the technology and more about, hey, I feel better if we just throw everyone and their mother and brother in the approval chain. And that was there before all the digital tools. It's even more so there now because it's very easy for me just to add Tim and Albert and 18 other people on that front. So I think there's a disciplined piece of that to say, that you need to be careful of on the digital front, because you can be creating a problem in that area. And just having clear lanes of like, hey, do these other people need to be in this loop, or like, who do I go to get something in and done? So even on the dev side of things, Tim, it's like, look, if the way I would explain it to people is like a bar. There's a point of time when the bar is open, you're taking feature requests and the rest of it. And then there's a point of time when the bar is closed. When the bar is closed, you can hit me on Slack, you can hit me up face-to-face, whatever else. Like it's not going to happen, or it's very difficult to have it happen. And I think as long as a rep knows that, then they can go in with the deal and say, hey, here's the time when I have the most valuable impact. Here's what Tim's going to need to hear one way or the other to get him to consider it. And it seems to move more quickly.
Yeah, I agree with how you stated it. I think it varies by company, though. So I'll take a contrarian view, because NCR is a 137-year-old company, and you're right, they'll track us down. I would rather have them track us down, rather have them pass the monkey to make it my responsibility, because for too many years, they just made shit up on their own. Right?
That's classic sales rep. Oh, yeah. Right. Oh, next quarter, man. Next quarter.
Right. So this is the problem. So now they have no reason not to at least get the right answer, right? And we got to tell our developers guide them back to product management, or guide them back to your management team or some executive who ultimately is responsible. But I think it's creating a sense of accountability and ownership, which we didn't have before, at least at NCR. Old company, grew through acquisitions. People kind of just kept doing what they were doing, even though the process had changed in the factory, in the software factory, and they didn't care. And so when I got here 3 years ago, I inherited we just got told all of this stuff, and I'm like, where'd it come from? And they're like, well, we don't know. We just made it up because what we always did as a startup. That's what we always did in our last company. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works anymore, right? So I get it can create a potential problem. For us, it's solving a problem. It's solving a problem of people taking creative liberty, over committing, and then us under delivering and upsetting customers. So, maybe I'm on the other side, but I think it's really important for us to have that level of open transparency, because ultimately it's going to help our customers in the long run. I
mean, what you just said, I don't know if that was ever measured. Like, I know we didn't measure it. Like at my last company, we didn't measure overpromise, underdeliver. Like, that wasn't a measurable thing. But I know, kind of like Eric, what you just talked about with customer on the customer service side, I know that's not a good experience. I know that's bad, right? And so I can see your point. Like, that if you're mitigating that behavior, that's got to be a big benefit.
So here we're very much. I got here. I implemented say-do ratio. Like, what is our say-do? Be able to measure it at a per customer level, at a per product level. Everything that we do has our goal, and you're never going to 100%, because if you are, you're not being aggressive enough. But you better be above 80, and I'd like to be around the 90% mark, and even higher where possible. So we got to measure that and hold people accountable. And I think these collaboration tools, allow us to do that in a much better way than email. At least my opinion.
How do you measure that? Real quick before Eric chime in, how do you measure say-do? Because I made a note of that this is something I've not heard this mentioned before. It makes total sense. How do you guys measure it currently?
I mean, from a software perspective, we have 2-week sprint commits or monthly milestone commits. We write it down. We share that. You joked, go look at the roadmap. Well, we have a roadmap. We have it documented. You don't got to go to my Git repository, but we've got a roadmap by product in a wiki page, or in a stored document in Confluence or Teams or whatever some of our different organizations do, and then we measure it. And I look at it and I review it every month. You said you were going to do X number of features and this many stories, et cetera, et cetera. How many did you deliver on? Oh, you missed 5 out of 50. Okay, so you had 90% delivered.
You're like a sales manager now. This is awesome. Yeah. This is what I'm used to. Like, hey, you committed X number of dollars of pipeline. You brought in Y. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. So we take a very kind of serious view at it, because it then gives us credibility with our customers of, hey, we said we're going to do this. We did 90% of it, 95% of it. Here's why we missed the other stuff. And our customers then are like, okay, at least now we can trust what we hear from you and have that level of expectation, because they're all banking on us delivering something, them implementing it 3 months later. That allows them to do a better marketing campaign, and it probably ties into some of the stuff that Eric's doing then with his tooling. Like, when companies are going out and satisfying consumers, they have to have the features coming from their software. I think it all ties together.
Eric, how do you guys have anything like that? Any interesting ways of how
Yeah,
you're handling this?
it's a balance. I can remember being on a sailboat with a group of friends, and they let me steer at a certain point. And I know nothing about sailing, and one of the guys that we were with said, "I'm like, how do you do this? Because I'm going all over the place." He's like, "Of course you're going to go all over the place, but you need to pick a point on the horizon." And you need to lock onto that. You won't be able to go straight. You go left and right, but eventually, as long as you're going there, and I think it's a struggle between being open and transparent and taking all orders at the bar, knowing you don't have enough liquor to go through and do, versus setting expectations on what you can actually do. What I've found is helping people understand where the laws of physics are and where they're going to have a better chance of getting something in helps shape things upstream by setting customer expectations accordingly. And from a customer perspective, they want to know, hey, am I asking for something impossible that the rep is going to tell me yes and somebody in dev is going to tell me yes, but there's no way in hell you're ever going to deliver? And then I'm going to look like an idiot down the line. Like, help me know the difference between me being kind of aggressive and getting something out of the vendor versus something that's not going to work for anyone. So it's a balance. And, I had a mentor tell me a long time ago, like anything in the product or dev area, like if you wanted to win a popularity contest, like that's not the role to go. That's not the role to go into, because eventually, you're either going to be pissing off the development crew or you're going to be pissing off the sales reps or the customers. And, it's keeping the impact. And I think this is where Tim was going, kind of that orienting to that North Star. You might go left and right, but as long as, you keep your eye on the prize, you're going to hit it eventually.
Well, that's one of the things that we found with software or tech companies specifically is that when you think about, for most things, when you get service, right? Let's say like you're going to service your car or you're going to get a house built, whatever. A lot of things that we do, we kind of in our minds have a general time frame of how long that's going to take. And so the customer comes in with this expectation, like if it's in this window, like you tell me you're going to build a pool for me and it's going to be done in 60 days. That sounds about right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just based on my neighbors, right? But when it comes to software and features, I mean, I think you'll agree with me. I think most customers think you just hammer a couple lines of code, Tim, and it's done, right? Like what are we talking about? It takes months.
Yeah. So here's the blessing and the curse of everything that's happened over the last couple of years and acceleration of digital transformation, or whatever buzzword you want to say. We've been spoiled as consumers of a handful of brands that really, really gotten this right. And so because they got it right, we don't understand why that just can't apply to everything else, from an oil change to getting stuff out of the dev factory or whatever else. So it's really forced a larger group of companies to up their game in what they do in their traditional business. And although they may never be an Uber or an Amazon or whatever else, they need to up that game. Now, what complicates this is if you look at somebody, Uber, for example, it's like, man, they just, they know me, they know who I am, where I'm at, what I'm going to need. It's like super great that I get to use through, a mobile app. But I know people at Uber and I have a ton of respect for it, and it's fantastic. They've really struggled when it's come to getting in additional channels. Like for people that, not so much on the app, like you go into an office, like retail locations that, Tim, that's their bread and butter on NCR, which is a hugely important part of things. Like no retail location, try and call somebody up over the phone for somebody that's not more comfortable going through and chatting. Like, good luck on that one way or the other. And even, I was talking with some folks the other day about, the telephony piece of Amazon. I'm like, what's people's experience been? And somebody said, it wasn't that good. I'm like, what are you talking about? You were able to find an 800 number on Amazon's web, like, give you a sticker and a power bar. Like, that's great. So I think as part of this, and, one of the other things I'd say on the retail channel, so we have we have a report we publish every year called, State of the Customer Journey. And it goes through and looks at, out in the industry, what are the trends and the rest of it. Oddly enough, through COVID, one of the big things that we saw is a spike in retail visits. More people were going to retail locations. And we're like, what? That doesn't really make sense. Like, why wouldn't everything just be e-commerce and only that component? And a big part of this was being able to get stuff online and then go into the retail location to get things done there. So some of the use cases you were talking about earlier, an ATM machine or a kiosk or a self-checkout or whatever else, that's a huge part of this, because even for folks like Amazon, like, okay, next day delivery, or I can, get it in an hour by going into a retail location. So I think that's a really important part of the equation here.
Yeah, I think the challenge. Yeah, I think the challenge really is, how do you give that omni-channel experience? And that's another one of these buzzwords that's been around for a while, right? And we almost hate to use it, but yeah, I mean, we have to be able to meet consumers where they want to be met, when they want to be met, and how they want to be met. And that's just plain and simple. And that goes for, at least in NCR's world, retail, banks, and restaurants, but it goes in anything that we do. You brought up, go and get your car serviced. You need to go into an auto parts store and get a new fan belt for do-it-yourself, fixing your fan belt at home or changing a battery, whatever it is. You want to have that experience on your terms, and in the model that you want. And so, and we're dealing with, how many, hundreds of millions of people across the US and then billions across the globe, and demographics, location, all the things that matter change that. And so when people think this should be easy, yeah, it can be easy on one, kind of micro thread through the process.
Yeah.
But it's not always easy when it comes to, we're trying to satisfy, 100 million people that are going to touch this, multiple times across 20 countries in the next 6 months. And so, I think it's the fun thing, at least in the job that I sit in. But then how do we enable consumers to understand that? How do we enable our employees to recognize that's what they're building? They're not building something that's just for one user or one demographic in one state, but you're building something that's going to be used globally. All those things build up into it. And the more we can be aware of that, I think is super important for us as leaders and super important for us as technology providers.
So let's dive into that next wave, which is, this, because you guys have hit at it. This acceleration or this desire to have things done faster is never going to stop on the consumer level, whether it's, like you said, a ride, whether it's getting an auto part, to on a consumer level, hey, I am a multi-billion-dollar retailer, Tim, and I need you to check in this feature for these machines. I'm going to assume you can just do this tomorrow. That expectation is never going away. So what do you guys feel like you need? So we kind of know the tooling of today of what you guys are leveraging to build your teams and deliver for your customers. What tools are the next things that you need? Or maybe maybe we don't know the tools, but you guys can define the problem that you'd like solved. Because you're rolling your eyes because there's a lot of, like, I need a lot of things solved. Let's start with you. Start with you, Tim. What do you need solved for you? Like, if you're like, hey, if you're an engineer out there, solve this for me. Like, what do you need to go even faster, better for the customer?
So I'll give you two answers. One on I'll say the engineering side. What do we need solved? We need to have more ubiquity of ubiquity and interoperability between some of the technologies, right? Yeah. Over time, I grew up in an era where it was highly open source, highly co-opetition. We're doing still some of that today, but I also see bifurcation coming in how some of the big tech providers. So I partner with Google and Microsoft. You've got Amazon, you've got IBM, you've got Salesforce, you've got others. Can we really continue to work in an interoperable way, right? Because at the end of the day, no one's ever going to have one stack that's all from one company and is we can't afford to be tightly integrated and tightly coupled. Same thing goes with the business that as I build software, they're not going to use everything from NCR. They're going to use some NCR. They're going to use some of our competition. They're going to find startups, et cetera. And so I think we really need to make sure as technologists and as leaders in the industry around digital, Eric said it as a bit of a buzzword, digitally transforming how we interact, whatever you want to think about, we need to do a better job of that interoperability and ensuring that's all working. So that's kind of on the technology side. The other side is, we have lots of companies that, like you said, I get calls every day from multi-billion-dollar down to just tens of millions in revenue customers, but they all think they're the most important customer. And we try and treat them like they're all the most important. But then they also have to understand, as they want to evolve, they might have to change some of their business processes, right? And I think that's something that is lost at times. It's lost that they just want us to build everything. And as you build more and more, it adds more complexity, and then it's a hard time to maintain it, and it might break in the future. And so if people want to go fast, they also need to look at how they can optimize their own processes to go faster as well, and not just rely on their vendor or their partner or their technology provider, because those two things go hand in hand. Business process at the company level, and technology provider providing resources to that company.
I agree. If you cater to the fringe, you will always be in trouble. We are having that pain inside of Mission right now as we expand our shows, and we got to add producers. So we're like telling producers, hey, you're going to have to start standardizing how you do it. Each producer's like, no, I want to do things my way. I'm like, hey, we're not going to have independent projects all the time. It's a bit of it's a challenge. It's just a different problem, right? It's just a different problem. Eric, I didn't know like what tooling or what things do you need to exist for you to get, in your teams to move faster, better, more efficiently for your customers?
So kind of turn this around and think of value that we deliver for our customers. What problems do we need to solve for them? And then kind of work backwards from there of tools that I need to help make these statements true.
Yeah.
So I think of the first piece of being able to give them better results and tying what we're doing to a metric and showing that. So I talked about some things earlier, net promoter score, churn, different pieces of where they can connect the dots and visualize it in the product, and help show that they're getting value out of this and connect dots. So a lot of that is around analytics, visualization, dashboarding, and the democratization of data versus, hey, it's in the hands of two people in the back office. This is one. The second piece is around time to value. So I think of a lot of the appetite of, however many years ago of this, multi-year implementation that's $1 zillion. Yeah. And that's just, if you think of a CIO in a company, like they have an expiration date on them like milk. So if they can't not only get something within a fiscal year, but get a result within 90 days up and running and show, hey, we did this, so they can continue with the project, that's just not going to fly. So I think of a lot of things that we do related to low and no code system, much more SaaS versus an army of people on a bus that need to go through and do customization and kind of the Accenture model. This is another block. The last piece is around lower risk. So again, this view of, hey, we have the winning lottery ticket, but you need to rip out everything that you've spent the last 20 years and 20 however many $1 million putting in. That's not going to fly either. There's some decisions that folks have made from a technology perspective that's going to stick around forever. So a lot of more API, more service-oriented architecture, more how can you build these components to play well with the other kids in the sandbox, so to speak. So if I look at how we architect our products and how we do go to market and the lens of as we're going through and building stuff, it's not just that, the rep asks for something or a customer asks for something. How does it go through those three filters and hit one or multiple of those? And what I've found is that drives us crazy internally. However, when it comes to going back to the customer and showing value and helping them show value to their customers and who they have to answer to, it's been a really helpful filter.
So what I've gathered from both of the things you guys just both said is I'm predicting then possibly a rise of middleware tools. So you already have Zapier, you already have MuleSoft, because you both hinted at it, which is like tools need to be able to interoperate together better. And you mentioned low code. I agree, where you maybe not need so many developers to build these together, because right now, as you know, it's like two tools, they both can have APIs, but like to make anything functional, like you have to possibly have a developer take data from product A, data from product B, drop it into database C. You probably need like HashiCorp to spin up two servers across two services. So like HashiCorp, Terraform, that goes across services. Zapier connects applications. MuleSoft connects applications. There's probably going to be because if you're saying this is still a gap, because I think a lot of these tools can do a lot of things, it sounds like there's much more to do.
Yeah. So what we've, and particularly in the area that we're in, we have a lot of customers come through and say, yeah, we've got one of those. We implemented one of those things. And then when you kind of peel that back, you're like, it's like you have the tool in the toolbox, but it's not solving your problem. And so the example, I think customer data platform is a great example of this. And even decisioning is a great example of this. It's like all the breadcrumbs are there. They're all there, but they're locked up in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different systems. If you think for a call center rep, for example, on their desktop, they have an average of 20 to 25 applications. Maybe some of them are from the same vendor, but at least half of them aren't. And they have all those breadcrumbs to be able to pull in and understand Albert Chu is a Chu, and your misspelled name Chu, and this website tracking and the rest of it. So where I'm going with it, you'll look at it and concepts as simple as like, yeah, we need a workflow tool, or, we need a database where we can have customer information, or we need some middleware. It's like, yes. And I think what you'll see is a lot more purpose-built applications that stitch together these different parts that are much more focused around solving a specific problem.
Yeah, and I agree with what Eric just said, and I love how he said data democratization, as well, and that goes to my view of integration, right? And so I think as you brought us together, Albert, said a lot of the same things. I agree there's going to be some of those fit-for-purpose apps or solutions that are built, and then it goes back to the second point I was making around to build those and to build them with speed. Some companies are going to need to adjust their model so they can go faster. We can go build something for them, custom, proprietary, exactly how they want to see it, or we can use something off the shelf that's fit for purpose for 80%, and then we tweak the last 20%, and they'll get there 3 months faster, 6 months faster than they would have if they held to their 122 requirements that are all custom to whatever their company is, whatever their.
I feel some personal pain in that statement. So I feel
a lot of personal pain in that statement. But yeah, technology is moving so quickly right now that asking what we need or how we're going to need it, I think is interesting. I think we have Eric and I both have a lot of great ideas. A lot of people do. One thing I think we both probably would agree on, or I'll say for me, I'll be interested if Eric does as well, that what we say today and what we think today will be different 8 months from now, right? Or will be evolved 8 months from now because we'll have 8 months more of insight and knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And something to get your take on as well, Tim, kind of under the democratization of data standpoint, I think the extent to which build organizations leverage product analytics and the quantitative things of, they just didn't ask to have it built. Who's using it? Where have they onboarded? Where's the friction? What's getting traction and what isn't, to provide not a silver bullet, but another filter to go through and really understand who's getting value out of what. I know within CSG, we use product analytics, and we use some of our own dog food or champagne or whatever the analogy is, so to speak, to kind of understand journeys as people go through our products. Is that something that you guys have been using as well, Tim?
Yeah, we're using that quite readily from the design phase all the way through the delivery phase, to watch user behaviors, to analyze their behaviors. Look, when they get rage clicking, right? All the way from when they're buying their groceries or buying they're ordering their food online to have delivered, et cetera, and then all the way down to transaction level details. Like, how can we help merchants or banks better serve their consumers by looking down at that transaction level detail? So I love the data concept because we're all consumers in the world. We all probably have a bank, or even if you're unbanked now, but you have a digital wallet for digital assets, and you're using those types of resources at a restaurant or a retailer, we can start to help those restaurants or retailers better serve those consumers if we can share that data back. And then we always get into, well, is it your data? Is it my data? My view is it's the consumer data. so the consumers can control who they share the data with. And if we can build, data platforms where consumers share their data with their trusted merchants, their trusted banks, their trusted providers, it's a way for all of us then to almost monetize our own perspective on that data, which I think would fit really well into some of the platforms that I've been learning about as I knew I was going to talk to you today and talk with you today that CSG offers. So I think data is going to be the heart of all of it. I know that's probably overused cliche as well, but consumers providing that data in for themselves will be a lot of benefit moving forward.
Yeah, and to dovetail into that, we've definitely seen the whole privacy component related to customer data and how that's handled. And, to start with, it was like this complete swing in one direction of you can't know anything about me, everything anonymized. But think back through to some times where you do want to know, you do want them to have that data because as a consumer, there's something that you get back from that. So my example that I give around this is with Amazon Prime. So, I buy just about everything through Amazon, get something from them that says, hey, do you realize you paid $250 last year in expedited shipping charges? Because I always leave everything to the last minute. And they said, Prime is $99. You could save, 150 and you get all this other stuff. And I was like, well, that's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be a Prime customer. And thank you for telling me. That's great. Instead of just let me continue to go through and pay, I'd gladly give up the information in that front. Think of what you go through with content services and recommendations that you get back from Hulu or Netflix or whatever else because you liked these particular things. So I think it's not that customers don't want to give it up. They don't want it to be abused. And I think for the companies that understand where that line is, can be very transparent around it and show value, I think the leverage of that data, like you're talking about, Tim, has great potential in a better experience for customers and also a better experience for the companies that are able to monetize that.
Yeah, you're right. Use Amazon Prime as an example. I'll use the example that I like to use with our customers that combine kind of restaurants and retailers together. I do a lot of shopping at Publix, great customer of ours. I also go to Chipotle a lot. I go to Dunkin' Donuts. I go to Starbucks, et cetera, et cetera. I want to share what I'm buying, what my preferences are at a Chipotle or a Morton Steakhouse, or these things back with my grocery store. So they're able to then promote to me things that I like based on my other daily buying habits, the type of coffee that I like, whatever it might be. And if I can monetize that through, I'm going to get a 5% discount or a couple of cents off, tortillas and my favorite type of, taco sauce or seasoning because of what I'm buying at Chipotle, that's where I think it can be really valuable for the consumer. And then people aren't going to be as worried, as you said, about privacy, because if they're seeing value back for them from their trusted brands, they'll opt in more. So another example for the listeners from a different perspective, but very similar to what you said with the Amazon Prime model.
Listen, the number one industry that needs to share data is healthcare by far. Like I've said this, we've all used it on the consumer level, but like we all also are consumers of healthcare and everything. I mean, healthcare is one of the most siloed business, like in terms of services that we use. It is absolutely the most siloed, right? You go to a new doctor. If any of you have kids, like the amount of paperwork you have to fill out is astronomical. Like it gets to the point where, and I know because I think some of you have done it probably, you just assume the answer is no because there's too many questions. Like, has your child ever? You're like, no, just fill it all the way down. The amount of data the amount of outcomes that could be improved if they could share, I think would be significant.
Oh yeah, and Alfred, didn't you just fill out that paperwork a month ago? You're like, I was here to this office a month ago. Why do I have to go through and do this out again? And then God help you when you go to a pharmacy. So actually, a lot of the work that we've done in the healthcare industry, and specifically with that tie with retail pharmacies, and these guys, they're going through an existential crisis of, hey, I'm going to get Amazon. So if I look at who's done great on the customer experience front, especially through COVID, retailers other than Amazon. So if you think of going into, like, you know, like a CVS, who's one of our customers, around not just stuff that you can get on the website, but curbside pickup, how you get reminders around prescriptions of something that's available versus going through and sitting there. Everything that they've done with the COVID vaccines and, you know, getting that set up and going in and QR codes, how they translate that into loyalty programs. So I think with all of this stuff, it's a journey. But I think a lot of industries are looking at this now saying, hey, like you said in the healthcare example, as a doctor's office, I am not the only game in town. There's a bunch of other ways to do this. You know, I have huge insurance premiums. I've got real estate, everything else. If I don't up my game up on the experience that I deliver to my customers that do have a choice now, it's an existential crisis for them. So I think as consumers, we benefit from that smaller group of brands that help, you know, up the game of the rest of these companies that you go through and interact with.